Paul Mensa's Wall of Power TV is brought to you in part by Grey Wolf Lodge, your home away from home in the North Woods, and Norway Point, your year-round getaway on Pelican Lake.
They call me a dog when I'm gone now, baby. They black dog when I'm gone. When I do get back with $100 bill, ain't it daddy where you been so long? My papa, he learned me to gamble. He told me bet on the old deuce and trade. When I do see my last OT go down, and I bet on some old deuce and trade. Yes, you call me a dog when I'm gone now, baby. Ain't it black dog when I'm gone? When I do get back with $100 bill, ain't it daddy where you been so long? And I rolled my dice in Cuba, I dealt my cards in Spain. When I do see my last old dollar go, and I get on some old freight train. You call me a dog when I'm gone, I'm a painted black dog when I'm gone. Well, when I do get back with $100 bill, hey, daddy, where you been so long?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is a Mets America Wall of Power TV special. It is February 11th, 2022. We are in Palmer's Bar, one of the oldest bars in the Twin Cities on Cedar Avenue. This is a labor of love interview today with my friend and my hero, Spider John Kerner. I've been waiting to do this for a long time. John called the bartender Willie, who we both know, and here we are. Cheers, John.
Cheers.
Nice to see you. How you getting through the winter?
Well, okay. It's been it's kind of boring, you know. But I got all shot up with the shots I was supposed to get, and then I got COVID.
Well, and then you got it. Wow.
Yeah. But it was hardly anything.
Good.
And they wanted me to isolate for 10 days, which I did. And outside of that, kind of boring.
Well, I'm so glad you could take the time today. After Tony Glover's memorial, we came here and you mentioned that you liked the show. And I said, geez, we got to have you on. You said, I'm not going to play. I said, we don't need you to play. We just need you to talk. So thank you so much. Spider John, let's start. Who gave you the nickname Spider?
Okay, there's two parts to this. Back in, I don't know, 61 or 2, I was in my hometown for a year and a half.
Which was where?
Rochester, New York.
Okay.
And I had a job in a automotive parts place. I was the paint mixer. But sometimes I had to go out where they sell all the different parts, and some of the parts would be way up on the shelves, so I'd climb the shelves to do that, and one of the guys called me Spider because of that. That's the first part. Second part is when I got together with Dave and Tony, and we were interested in the old blues guys, and they all got the moniker.
Right.
Tampa Red and Lightning Hopkins and Blind Lemon and like that, so we needed those. And Dave was Snaker because he had a way of dancing that was kind of undulative, and Tony was Little Sun spelled S-U-N because of his dour, well, I don't know what you want to call it. He never smiled.
I know that.
He did smile once, I saw. He was being photographed by a guy at the Newport Folk Festival, Dave Garr.
Sure, G-A-H-R, I know that
Yeah,
name.
he was one of the best. But anyway, he was taking a shot of Tony, and of course Tony wasn't smiling. And finally, Dave Garr said, "Smile, you son of a bitch," and then he couldn't help himself.
Fantastic. You know, I booked you and Tony for a couple of gigs over the years. Tony, we've had 4 words together, and 2 of them were the same. When I booked you guys up in Hibbing, it was one of those Dylan tributes. I'm not sure, it's Ramblin' Jack there, or Maria Muldaur.
Yeah, could be either.
But so I went up after the gig to pay, and Tony said 2 checks. Then I was part of a gig with John Cohn and Uncle Willie and the Brandy Snifters. You and Tony, I opened up that show, but I was kind of taking care of the money, and I went up to Tony, he said 2 checks. And so he said 4 words to me in my entire life. Both words twice. Yeah. But God bless him. He, you know, how many times have I seen the 2 of you play over the years, especially in the West Bank? There's probably very few harmonica players that could follow you like Tony did.
Yeah, that could be. Right.
So how did you end up in Minneapolis?
I came here to go to university. I had been good in science and math when I was in high school, and I was interested in airplanes, so I was going to be an aeronautical engineer. And I did pretty good at school for about a year and a half. And then one day this guy invited me up to his room to listen to folk songs on a record. And he played himself a little bit.
Okay. Do you remember his name?
Yeah, Harry Weber.
I've heard that name.
Yeah.
Was he a 12-string guy?
Say what?
Did he play 12-string?
No, he just did that, you know, he didn't perform for audiences like that. He just did it on his own. But anyway, I listened to these records. I think I heard maybe the Weavers, Josh White, Cindy Gooding. You remember Cindy Gooding?
I believe she, I've read about her. I've never heard her sing, but didn't she have I think she had a radio show in New York.
I think that's true, yeah. She had a very, very powerful voice, big woman, tall woman. But anyway, he loaned me his guitar and a Burl Ives songbook, and I took it to my room and started fiddling with it, and that was the beginning of one thing and the end of another.
And what year was that?
That'd probably be 58.
And not long after that, the Scholar opened, where I believe you did some of your first gigs.
Sure.
So that would have been what, 60, 61, something like that?
Yeah. I had been out in West Coast. I got into the military from being sweet talked by a Marine recruiter. And I enlisted for 4 years, and at one point I was in a rather serious car accident that put me in the hospital for a while and killed another kid.
Oh man.
Yeah, and that eventually got me out. But when I was there, I had read in a Playboy magazine an article about coffee houses, and which was interesting to me, and they also had them there in LA. So I went up to see a few of them, so I understood what that was. And I didn't expect to come back here and find something like that, but there was the 10 o'clock Scholar.
We used to go to the Scholar in the coffee break, my friends and I, and sit in the back and play chess. But we kind of sort of had a lot of disdain for the folk music in the music part of the Scholar. You know, we thought we were into jazz and blues and stuff, and we never heard any there. It was a bunch of folkies. But I remember one night walking into the coffee break, and Kerner was playing, and he had a little bit of a kind of a Bo Diddley beat going, and I was fairly impressed because I thought, well, this guy's, you know, for a folkie, he's got a little bit of the blues in him, you know.
Dave Ray used to go to University High School, which was located over near Dinkytown. I think I first ran into Dave in the early Scholar days, 10 o'clock Scholar in Dinkytown.
I met Tony in we hung out over at that Minnesota Folk Society Jazz over there on 15th Avenue, and you know, we were the only cats playing any blues. Everybody else was into that folk music stuff, but to me, folk music has always been blues.
In the hall, I heard this music coming out. There was this huge black 12-string sound, lead belly tunes. I was pretty impressed. It sounded real good. The cat was coming on. So I went in, knocked on the door, went in, looked around the room, and there was nobody there that looked like they could have made that kind of music. But there was this guy with a guitar, and it was this blonde kid, kind of flushed cheeks, and that was Dave Ray. He was still in high school at the time, but he was kind of old for his age, hanging out with older cats and parties and all that.
Who was Red Nelson running it then?
No, I think at that time it was a guy named Clark Batho.
Okay, I've heard his name.
Yeah, and Dave Lee had a part of it at one point, and I forget where Red fit in. But
Red, another 4 years and years and years, a Palmer regular, as most of the cool men and women were, spending time at the Palm Room, as we like to call it. Right. So when did you bump into Dave Ray and Tony Glover?
Dave was part of the scene over at the Scholar, and he lived just down the street, actually. So I knew Dave from there, and later on, when I was in Rochester, Dave had gone to New York City, I suppose, to test himself out with his music.
Mm-hmm.
And he was working in the garment district. I think he was just pushing clothes around.
Right.
But anyway, I went out to visit him on a weekend. Did it a couple of times, actually, but one weekend there was Tony visiting him as well. And it was kind of at that point that we realized we had enough in common to try to do stuff together.
Right. Yeah. Well, it must have been fun the first time the three of you played together. You could kind of feel there was some magic there of some sort.
I can't tell you that I remember it, to tell you the truth.
Well, so you guys, of course, made a big splash at the 1963 Newport Folk Festival.
Actually, no, Philadelphia.
Philadelphia. Okay, tell us about that.
Okay, Paul Nelson and John Pancake had the Little Sandy Review, little magazine, folk magazine here.
Right.
And Paul was in particular interested in our music. He thought it was interesting. And he set up a recording gig, you know, in Milwaukee. It was run by a guy named, his last name was Nunn, part of Nunn Bush Shoes, but he was an audiophile. He liked testing his equipment out, you know, and trains and stuff like that. And he wasn't really interested in what we were doing, but he agreed to do the recording. So we went down there. We were not allowed to smoke or drink or swear.
Tough for Ray Glover at that time, I'm sure.
Yeah, but we did it anyway. And we had a recording. And then Paul sent them around to different record companies to see if they were interested in it. And it got to Elektra Records, run by Jack Holtzman. And he was a guy who liked to try stuff out. And so he signed us up. And he was a really good guy. We became good friends, actually. But he signed us up. And then had us go out to, he re-released that for the Running, Jumping, Standing Still album. No, the Colonel Ray Glover, what is it called? Blues, Rags, and Holler.
Right.
Yeah. And then he got us out to New York to record a second album. And the Philly Folk Festival was coming up, and he managed, we weren't booked there, but he managed to get us on the show one night. And so we went down there to do that. We were somewhat intoxicated, I'm sure. And we behaved like we always behaved.
Right.
Which is, it hadn't been seen, that kind of performance hadn't been seen before.
Right. Well, that whole white folky tradition. It was a little more puritanical, I suppose.
I don't remember there being one at that time, to tell you the truth.
Right.
We were among, they'd never seen white boys play the blues like that,
Right.
you know? But anyway, we went up to perform, and
And young white guys,
yeah, right,
early 20s.
right, yeah. And Jack Holtzman said, listen, you know, when you get done with your performance, there's going to be a guy who wants to come up and manage you. He said, I'll give you a bottle of Jack Daniels if you mess him around, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, this guy comes up after we were done and talked to us for a while, and he eventually went back to Holtzman and said, they're not manageable.
Unmanageable.
Right. But also there was, the only one I can remember about is Betsy Siggins
Sure.
out in Cambridge, who was part of the folk scene there and part of Club 47, which was the big club out
She
there.
was kind of the maven in a way.
Yeah, right. And she got us set up to play at the Club 47. And I remember we went there and we were walking to the gig, and it was totally mind-blowing. There was this line around the block.
Wow.
And that was, between the festival and that was our introduction to the overall scene.
Wow. Well, that's incredible. And of course, Paul Nelson, I think he was originally from Warren, Minnesota, ended up in New York, was a writer, and also he worked for, I believe, Mercury Records. He might have been the guy that signed like the New York Dolls or something. It was like, would have been totally yin and yang with Colonel Rand Glover. And of course then Jack Holtzman on Elektra had the Doors.
Hey, at the Doors, that's right.
Did you ever get to meet Paul Rothschild, who produced the Doors?
Oh, sure, he produced us as well.
He did. Now, the second record?
I'm not sure, but it could be.
Okay. So when did, you did some solo gigs out in Greenwich Village too, didn't you?
Well, I think mostly it was in Boston and Cambridge.
Okay.
That became a second home for me in a way. And there was a lot of clubs, little ones and big ones, you know.
You used to play at the Plow and Star, right?
I used to play at the Plow and Stars on the smallest stage that's ever been. But, and others around there.
Okay, here we go.
Well, everybody's going for the money, thinking that makes the world go round. This old world keeps a turning on and on. Well, when you're laying underneath the ground, somebody got a hold on you, and I got a hold on you every day life. Hold on your friends and your relatives too. Yes, and I got a hold on your children and your wife. Hey, they sell you on the television, and they sell you on the radio. They sell you any old the way that they can. Yes, and they come knocking on your front door. I think I will buy me a wonderful car, a TV and a stereo. I'll drive and I'll watch and I'll be listening all the time, yes, and I won't have to think anymore. And now that we got everything that we want, I'll tell you something you might know. It won't be long until this way of life is gone. Is it better that way, or don't you know?
You told me a great story a while back about playing at the Gaslight on McDougal. You were talking about the owner. Was it Clarence Hood?
Yes.
Yeah, tell us about Clarence. A lot of people have read his name who read the folk books, but very few people have actually can tell stories about Mr. Hood. So tell us one.
Yeah, well, Clarence Hood was a genuine Southern gentleman, you know, really something that way. And I suppose I should tell this story.
Oh, please do.
It's, I had met this guy out there, and he had a lot of money, I think. But anyways, one day in the afternoon, he said, "Come with me, we're going for a ride," you know. And we drove around, we went in a taxi cab. And we stopped places and he'd have the cab wait for us, you know. And drove by some place where his girlfriend used to be, and his tears, all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Anyway, I was supposed to play that night. And I got back, by the time I got back, I was loaded, I must admit. And I went down to the Gaslight, got up, and I played one song, played part of another song. I think I did the first one over again. You know, wasn't making it. And Clarence came up.
I've done that.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, Clarence came up, and there wasn't many people there. He says, "Go home and take a nap." It didn't bother him.
Right. Nice man.
He was a very nice man, yeah.
Yeah, I did a gig about 5 years ago. They did a documentary on my band, Cats on the Stars, myself. So I took my friends out for dinner, and we started having some martinis. And they were having it in Duluth. It was going to be the debut of the WDSC TV, which is the public TV station up there. But it was also going to be a fundraiser. Yeah. So we had cut a deal to get a free hotel room at this nice place for this guy that owned the bar. Pay for the room, we'll do a set after the show. Well, every 10 minutes they start hawking the wares. Buy this, buy that, send money to the station. So we started drinking at about 7. We finally got up by about 10:30. We played a tune, and we go, now, yeah, for our next tune, we'd like to play Born in Chicago by the Paul Butterfield Blues Band. And the guy in the front said, "You just played it."
Yeah. I suppose every performer ought to have that experience once.
Once or twice, yeah. We went on the apology tour the next day. We're still welcome back. Tell us about, there's a couple of interesting Greenwich Village stories with you, John. You were telling me once something about the guy who they wrote the story about Dog Day Afternoon, the guy that went and held up the bank.
Oh, all right. I think we're talking about, oh geez, can't think of his name, which is common with me these days.
Yeah, that's okay.
But anyway, that was okay. All three of us played the Newport. I think it was '64.
Okay.
And oh no, I'm talking about something else here. This was when Willie and I were there.
Okay.
That was in '69.
Okay.
But anyways, we had a band, you know, drummer and bass with me and Willie. And back then, Newport was really, really nice. I've been recently, and it's not what it used to be by any means. But they put us up in these big mansions, you know, there was a lot of mansions.
Newport, Rhode Island.
Right. And anyway, we had a room. I was with my wife at the time, and we were in our room going to sleep. And after a while, she says, "Do you smell smoke?" And it turned out Sandy Konikoff, who was our drummer, he'd stacked all his drums on top of each other, and it was underneath a lamp. And he didn't like the lamp, so he put a towel over the lamp,
right,
which caught fire and burned the heads out of his drums, you know. So we needed somebody. And this guy's name's going to pop into my head sometime. But anyways, I knew this guy from before, and we got him to play with us. And that worked out just fine. And it didn't last that long because the whole situation changed. But after that, I visited him in Greenhaven, which is one of the prisons up there.
Okay.
And after he did get out, I think he did 5 years, but he said what happened was he was in I forget the name of the bar in Greenwich Village, a little down below level, and they were drinking, and there was probably some other stronger drugs involved. There was him and 2 other people, and this other guy comes in and convinces him to rob a bank.
It's a good idea. We've been drinking all day. Let's go rob a bank.
Right. And this guy had a gun. So they went into the bank, and there was gunfire, and a guard and this guy who had the gun both got killed. And of course he was left. And he says, I woke up in the middle of the bank with all this going on. You know what I mean? He was
spread out.
Yeah. Like I say, I went up to visit him a number of times, and finally he got out.
But that was what the story, the movie Dog Day Afternoon, was based on that.
See, this is something I don't know about.
Yeah.
Really? Oh my goodness.
Did he take people hostage?
No, no.
Okay.
No, it was nothing like that. He didn't know what was happening.
Still a great story, but it had nothing to do with Dog Day Afternoon.
I was really, really glad to see him when he got out. I just did not want him to be there, you know.
Yeah. So tell us about the '64 Newport Folk Festival. Now, this was the time the Paul Butterfield Blues Band was coming online.
Right.
The Blues Project. But you guys were really the first white acoustic
country blues
you know, aficionados.
Right, yeah.
So what was that show like when you played in '64?
Well, one thing I remember was we went up, got on the stage. It was a workshop kind of stage rather than the main stage. And I remember we played the first song, and when we got done, we heard this sound which I'd never heard before, and it was dozens and dozens of cameras clicking.
Wow.
You know, people take our picture, you know. But all I remember is we did good, you know.
Well, it was, you know, such great history for you guys.
In the mid-'60s, Kerner, Ray, and Glover began to drift apart, geographically as well as musically. Kerner was rambling and tumbling.
He and his girlfriend and me got into a $50 car that they'd bought, and we drove to Montreal in Canada, hung out there for a couple of weeks. Then we went down to New York City and fooled around, and then back up to Boston. And at that time, there was the Club 47 scene going full blast, and I saw some people that I'd met at the festivals, and decided I was going to drop myself off there and get in on the scene. I had a place where some people would put me up, and there was clubs to work, and that's, I guess, the point at which I actually started becoming a steady professional musician.
Paul Mensa's Wall of Power TV is brought to you in part by Grey Wolf Lodge, your home away from home in the North Woods,
And Norway Point, your year-round getaway on Pelican Lake. Watch for Paul Mensa's new book, Alphabet Jazz, Poetry, Prose, Stories, and Songs, coming soon.